Welcome, everybody. We were going to give everybody about 30 seconds to join anyway. I'm sure people will continue to trickle in. Um, and as they do, I'm sure the only thing they will miss is me talking, which is definitely the least exciting part of the next 40 minutes or so. So we will be introducing Niah in just a minute here. I am Emily Ladoni, by the way. My sole job here will be mostly to man the chat. And the best part of all of you attending this live is that you have the opportunity to ask questions. So please do so. You can go ahead and enter any questions in the Q&A at the bottom or just say hi. If it is a good time to break in during the presentation, I will do so. Otherwise, we will have plenty of time for questions at the end. So I will likely save most of those till the end of the presentation. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. The best part of my role here is the opportunity to introduce Niah Johnson with Ping Identity and the opportunity that I've had to work with this team for many years. This is an organization, a leader that's very committed to excellence, committed to really not just managing and delivering training, but really focusing on helping their organization be successful. And we specifically asked Niah to present because we have heard from so many organizations, especially recently, that are going through change, uncertainty. And I always immediately kind of think about this Ping story partly because of the significant change they've gone through. They were recently part of a merger. Can't get bigger change than that. That was between ForgeRock and Ping, and merging two very different learning functions. And they were able to navigate that change and uncertainty and really build a brand new culture of learning within that new organization by sharing the powerful data that they had access to that really drives their action every day. So I don't want to steal any of Niah's thunder here. I'm excited for all of you to hear her story. And Niah, thank you so much for being here today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emily, for that really lovely introduction. Hi, everyone. Like Emily said, my name's Niah. I'm going to just share my screen and make sure that everybody can see that. Is that coming through to you okay, Emily?
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, Metrics That Matter. I'm excited to be running the webinar today. I'm going to be focusing, as Emily said, around navigating uncertainty. So casting our minds back a little bit to 2023 and 2024 when we first had our merger. And we're going to really talk today mostly around how to make learning mission critical with data. Alrighty, so this is the agenda for today. So I'm going to do a very quick introduction of who I am, what Ping Identity is. A lot of people haven't already heard of us as we're a little bit of a niche technology company. And then we'll go further into the challenge. So what was the context to some of these challenges and what were we trying to tackle over the last couple of years? And then I'm going to get into the meat of it. So we're going to talk about how we lead with data as a Ping training team. And I'm also going to show you the back end. So I'll show you the exact data that we use and how we use it. And then we'll build into some of that leadership buy-in as well. So how do you get your leadership to really understand the value that training brings to your organization? And then finally, I'll just wrap up and there'll be time for some questions at the end. So, like I said, my name is Niah. I am the Senior Manager of Training Operations at Ping. I have been working with Ping for around 4 years now, and I was previously working with ForgeRock prior to the merger. And yeah, throughout my time, I've really focused on using data to drive meaningful and measurable outcomes. I'm particularly passionate about customer success and the quality that we can bring from our courses and our training. So, what is Ping? Who is Ping? Ping Identity is a access and identity management company. So, think your thumbprint to get into your banking app. Think your one-time code to get into your internal systems. And we help all different types of customers, delivering a secure and seamless digital identity experience whilst maintaining your security and preventing fraud. So our customers range from consumers to employees, and we're really just trying to get that end experience of making it easy to access the connected world. So what does my team do? So at Ping Identity, our training team that I work with is all around customer training. So our internal employees and the partners do leverage some of our training, but we are predominantly focused on the customer experience with technical training. We deliver a variety of training modalities to help our customers understand and implement the identity technologies effectively. So, to give you an idea of what that looks like in numbers, as we're here to talk about data today, we delivering around 1,200 certificate ILT registrations each year. We have 14,000 on-demand registrations and around 1,000 customers accessing our certifications as well. And then at the bottom, you can see the 900 active training subscriptions. I will talk a little bit more about what that training subscription looks like, but it's essentially our core offering to our customers and a key revenue driver for our training team. And then I've just popped on the right as well, where you can see some of the engagement metrics as well. So how much are our customers engaging with our training? We have a 91% attendance rate for instructor-led training and a 35% completion rate for our on-demand. So we're really happy with, how much engagement we get from our customers. And the goal is to obviously get as much training out to them so that they are successful in their deployments. So let's talk about the challenge. So as Emily mentioned, we went through a merger back in 2023, and this essentially was us finding ourselves with two companies, two cultures, and most importantly, two learning systems with two tech stacks. So we really had to quickly pivot and suddenly figure out how to deliver, a seamless training experience for our newly unified customer base. And we wanted to do this without losing the momentum and the quality of our training as well. So within this, we faced three main challenges. Firstly is those new business requirements. Anybody who's been through a merger will know that very quickly you have potentially a slightly different type of business goal or outcome that you want to achieve or that the senior leadership team want to achieve. And we had to make sure that our training solutions were able to meet that demand. And to do that, you need to be flexible and you need to be scalable. So these were the kind of requirements that were coming top down to us. So we needed to provide an uninterrupted service for all of our customers. It doesn't matter that internally we're scrambling at times. It doesn't matter what is going on the inside. We need to make sure that everything that our customers are purchasing and we need to be able to access is staying the same. We also need to continue to drive the growth and sales that we're looking to do. That's the point of a merger, is to bring two excellent businesses together and keep driving growth and sales. And then, as I mentioned, that internal culture was a big one. So you've got two set ways of working and two kind of teams coming together and figuring out how to work under this new one ping, as we called it at the time. Our next challenge was the need to interrogate our systems. So we needed to merge our tech stacks. We can't have two management systems. We can't have two quality systems. We needed to align our vision and select the vendors that suited these new business requirements. So that led us to outline our own system requirements. What do we need as a training team to be able to keep delivering our training as expected? And what systems do we need that can fulfill those requirements? So some of the key requirements was firstly fulfillment of our training subscription model. So I mentioned this at the start. This is our key offering for our trainings, and our customers purchase this at the time of when they purchase the product as well. And it gives them a bit of an all-you-can-eat access to our training. So they can access our public courses, our on-demand training, and certification program as well. So we needed to make sure that what they had purchased, they can still purchase and they can still access. And also we want our new customers to be able to access this as well. This was a legacy ForgeRock program, so we had to very quickly shift to ensure that all of our new Ping customers, legacy Ping customers, could also access this model. Which leads me into that customer portal. So ensuring that our customer portal is intuitive and accessible for all of the new customer base. We also needed to ensure all of the training completion was recorded accurately and our customers receive that recognition. As people in L&D, you know that people love a certificate, they love a badge, and we need to make sure that our customers are still receiving that when they complete their training. And finally, what I've highlighted in red here is something that might not seem sometimes as a minimal viable product, but is so important and pivotal to me and my team, which is ensuring that we can evaluate our customer satisfaction. We obviously need to get off the ground and be able to deliver the training, but we need to evaluate if that's working and how our customers are feeling about it. So that was really key for us to pick a vendor that can maintain that and help us grow scalably with that. And finally, our last challenge was the leadership buy-in. So leadership buy-in is incredibly critical and can be challenging sometimes as an L&D organization. So for training, there's not always a really clear, obvious line to revenue generation. And so we need to try and make that connection really visible, especially with a brand new training and brand new leadership team who are in America. So I don't know if you could tell, I am British. And so we had to really understand what the new culture was going to look like, what was important to our leadership team, and to ensure that training, we can demonstrate that value that training is bringing. So that's a very brief overview of some of the challenges and some of the context to what we were facing at the time of the merger. So I'm not going to go into exactly how we picked every single vendor and everything that we did from start to finish, but I really want to hone down on how we entangled the business and systems requirements into our strategic mission and maintained that focus by using data and leading with data. So one of the first things we had to do was implement a really clear monthly business review. Now, some people on this call may be thinking, duh, of course, you should be running a monthly business review. Some people might not really know exactly what that entails. So I don't want to overlook it because I think it's a really important part of how you drive data, and it's a cornerstone of a data-driven team. So really that all that looks like is bringing your key leadership team, so our training leadership team, into a call on a monthly basis to review our KPIs. Now, what are our KPIs? So for a customer training team, we have kind of three key elements to it. We have our sales KPIs, so our bookings, our revenue, subscription management, our private events. We have operations, which is what I am leading on around registration, around quality, around ticket management, and then our content development team as well, who are focusing on key credential growth, so our badging management, how our sprints are running, and then also the certification pass rates. So those are some of the examples of what we're running through and what data we're seeing each month. And something that really helped us was when we were thinking of our kind of key KPIs and how they linked to our key initiatives. Sometimes we didn't have the measures or we didn't have the metrics, so we needed to go out and find it. So one of my top tips from today is don't be afraid to get creative with your metrics. If you aren't tracking something, start tracking it, and then you can really clearly measure yourself against each of your key initiatives. Who would be included in that business review? I've already outlined kind of the key leaders that would be part of that. For Ping, we have a dedicated leader for each of those components, and then they're responsible for tracking all that information and reporting it up to our director. And then finally, you obviously need robust systems to be able to pull all this data together and pull it efficiently. You don't want to be mining through hours and hours of data. You want to be able to pull that quickly and easily and be able to do the evaluation because that's the most important part. So this is what our scorecard would look like. I'm giving you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what our initiatives have been this year and what we've been doing as a customer training team. The main part of this is that column for the KPIs. So as we have each of our key initiatives listed on the left, we then link who is responsible, what are the actions each quarter, and then what are the key measures against each of them. And some of them are pretty straightforward in terms of like a renewals target or a revenue target. And then others will be a little bit different, like seeing manual time reduction based on our integrations. That's something that we had to create on the fly. So this is kind of giving you an idea of like what our team is doing on a monthly basis to keep data in mind. But when thinking specifically about quality, I felt that there was a bit of a gap. I didn't have enough time to talk all about our wonderful metrics and metadata. I couldn't talk about our customer experience as much because there's so much to be involved within the monthly business review. So this is where I introduced a quarterly quality review. So, like I said, although that the monthly business reviews gave a really great wide context to our training business performance, it didn't give the granularity and it didn't give us time to really think about that customer experience. So I implemented a quarterly review where we can really get into some of that performance and quality. So we then looked at our response rate, our NPS, and we were able to get more granular of what is our NPS by client and what feedback are they providing to us? What is our NPS by course and how is our content performing? And then into our instructor performance and some of those trends. And when implementing this, I invited our director of training in, our curriculum manager, so that they can see how the content is performing, and then our instructor manager and our quality lead. So these are the key participants I felt was really important to be able to get that actionable, those actions out of those meetings. And again, to be able to do that, we needed a robust reporting system to be able to leverage the data that we needed. And that was a really easy one for us because we already had such a fantastic partnership with Metrics That Matter. So let me give you a peek behind the curtain. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail around what our slides looked like and how we were using that data as well. So we'd always start off with the highest overview of our NPS. So our NPS target as a team is 40%, and our response rate target is at 65%. So you can see that in the red and the grey, and you can see how our performance matches against that. And again, immediately, if I am tracking this on a quarterly basis and on a monthly basis, I can see the trends that are happening. And we saw a bit of a downward trend with our response rate around 2024. And we knew we needed to tackle that in 2025 initiatives. So in our 2025 initiatives, we implemented some more instructor engagement projects. How can we hold our instructors accountable to making sure that our students are completing the survey in the class on the day? We know, I'm sure everybody knows here, that if you do it on the day, you're more likely to have that more positive response rate. And we can already see some of the impacts of that. Next, we would then look into our customer NPS. So you can see here the sliding NPS scale, some of our promoters, all the way down to our heavy detractors. And my quality lead would be responsible for bringing out the sentiment from the comments and being able to just give a quick summary on the side. So again, we can come into this call ready to make actions, ready to action any issues that we've seen coming up across the quarter. Similarly, we would then have the same setup for our courses. So again, a sliding NPS scale for each of our courses. And you can see on the right here the course material quality leaderboard. Now, again, I mentioned about if you don't have the metric, don't feel scared to make the metric. We wanted to be able to assess our course material specifically, and we didn't have a way to do that. So we added a question into the survey. One of my tips when it comes to surveys is don't have them too long. So if you're going to put something in, try and take something out. But we decided that this was something we really wanted to evaluate this year. So now we have a really good idea of what are our top performing quality materials and what are our bottom, and what can we learn from either or. How were they developed? Is there a way that we can mimic that same structure across all of our materials? So we have that consistency of our quality. And that leads me a little bit into some of the impacts of these quality calls. So in Q1, we saw a key trend where our students weren't meeting our prerequisites. So either the students or the instructors were struggling to maintain the pace of the class, keep up with the class, and weren't finding as much value because it was either too easy or too hard. So our solution was to create a prerequisite assessment. So we implemented a prerequisite assessment on our training portal that pops up before they register fully for the ILT training. And this was implemented last month. So we're just starting to track some of that progress now, and giving our customers the guidance that they need before they get into the training. In Q2, we saw a downward trend of our private events. So our customers we saw were expecting too much to be included in such a short amount of time in the training. And we were saying potentially yes too often for more challenging requests. And it was really not showing in that quality in the NPS in the end. So our solution here was something we could really action immediately. Sometimes they are long-term, larger projects. Sometimes it's a smaller, really quick change in a process. So here we were able to establish a new private event policy, and that was just a small tweak in terms of how do we customize and how do we tailor our training. And then what was most fundamental was creating a preparation checklist. And this was used by our external partners and by our internal private event lead to ensure that we've got a consistency, and we're setting the correct expectations with our customers at all times. And then the final one, which was just last month for Q3, we saw a trend of some of our new courses being released and them having immediately a low NPS. So them potentially being revisions needed or adjustments needed to the course, which is not what we want, especially when we're doing a lot of promotion around a new course that's coming out. So our solution here, again, because my curriculum manager was part of the call, they were able to go back and reevaluate some of that QA process. And we've now established a dedicated external resource for QA for both new and revised courses, whereas before we were just doing that internally. So this gives you an idea of how impactful those key touch points with your leadership team can make. So just going through some of those impacts and thinking back to the measure of success. That tends to be the cycle of using our data and leading with data. We use data to analyze, we create suggestions on new initiatives, and then we measure that success of those new initiatives, and it kind of works in a cycle like that. So for each of our initiatives in Q1, our measure of success against the prerequisites was hopefully to see a reduction in the prerequisite kind of survey comments, and also have to see the click rate of the suggested content. So when they complete the assessment, they get said, oh, actually, we're not ready yet. How about you try this class first? And we want to measure that click rate. How often is that happening? Now, as I mentioned, we implemented that in October, so I don't unfortunately have the success measures for you today, but that's something that my team will continue to, and if we were to come back next year, we'd hopefully have some really positive metrics to back that up. Next is the private events. So this one, like I mentioned, was an immediate action, and we've been really pleased to see some immediate success with it as well. So as you can see from Q1 and Q2, our private event NPS for 2025 was really low and below our target of 40%. And then moving into Q3, we saw that really improve, and we hit the 52% NPS. And that was really just a process change, a checklist put in place that we were doing before in our heads, but to formalize that process really made an immediate impact on our NPS. And obviously, that is a key measure of success. And we'll also be looking at some of those student sentiments and what are our customers saying from those private events as well. And then finally, again, we only just implemented some of these changes, but the measure of success here would be to reduce seeing a reduction of the patches needed on our courses, and also tracking that NPS for all of the new courses that we have coming out. So I'm going to just take a quick pause here. We've just kind of covered really clearly around those system requirements, the business requirements, and how to address those by leading with data. Emily, was there any big questions, anything else we need to touch on right now?
We do not have any open questions, but they're likely we'll maybe make some follow-up because that data is really, really helpful. This is an interesting part of the story to talk about the leadership buy-in and how that happened. So I might have some questions there too. but
Awesome.
nothing for now.
Great, no problem. We'll keep moving then. So, this section, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that leadership buy-in. So, we talked at the start of how do we get to potentially like a newer leadership team, or a slightly different leadership team to really buy into the training that we're delivering for our customers, and how do we bring that value into the forefront, of our business mission. So I talked just now a lot about what's important to training and what's important to how we drive using data. And we've kind of broken that down into our NPS, most importantly, but then some of the learner comments, our instructor performance, our course performances, and that filters down into our initiatives and how we develop our courses. And this is a really important cycle that happens within training, right? And we have our dashboards to be able to very quickly access that data. But when thinking about what matters to training versus what matters to the wider business. So our customer NPS and our training NPS is really important. But how do we filter that down into the wider business mission? So we have a lot of assumptions with training. We assume that customer training leads to happier customers. We assume that leads to customers not having to raise as many support tickets because they're already enabled. We assume that a long-term usage of training means that they are more likely to renew because they've had a better experience with the implementation. And also, we assume that there's going to be additional investment. If they have a really great experience with one of our products, they're more likely to expand that product base and potentially purchase more with Ping Identity. But that's a lot of assumptions, and that's a lot of things to, you can say to your leadership team, I think this is what training does. I think this is the impact we're having. But again, what we need to do is demonstrate that through data. So this is what we did. We went through some of our value assumptions, and then we linked them back to what do we need from the wider business to be able to link training to these different departments. So our data requirements for renewals versus support versus our NPS and also our ARR growth as well. Now, if you're thinking about doing something similar, my recommendation here is to think about what you need from that team before you go and interact and collaborate with that team. You need to have a good idea of what do I need, what reporting systems am I likely to need to leverage, and how do I connect that data. So for us, our central kind of nervous system in terms of data is Salesforce. So we will use that and we will extract the customer data from there. We'll extract our quality data from MTM, our training management data from Administrate, and it all syncs through into our kind of central Salesforce. So that's what I did. I wrote out each of the key requirements we needed and I went to each department to say, hey, can I get this? And often they're doing a similar thing. They're tracking something similar, and you can often leverage and adjust reporting where needed as well. So after pulling all of that data and being able to connect it with our training data as well, this was our final outcome. So we were able to use some of this data internally to really drive the value that training is bringing to the organization. So first of all, training cuts customer support tickets in half. So we were able to make a correlation between our trained and untrained customers, and untrained customers are raising 2 times as many support tickets as trained customers. Tell that to your support team and they will understand and they will be your cheerleaders for training. Happy customers are highly trained customers. So we evaluated from our high level company NPS and connected it to our training NPS. And we found that our overall NPS promoters have more likely interacted with training and had a positive experience with training as well. Trained customers also invest more with us, so 3 times over, and also that training is driving that stronger account expansion. So this is related to that additional investment and that renewal. So a trained customer is more likely to have a net positive renewal and also invest more with us. So this is where we really were able to come to the leadership team and say, this is the value that we're bringing to the team. This is why we might need more course developers. This is why we need to add in this AI system. This is why we need additional investment because this is the output that training is bringing and the value that it's bringing to the organization. So that gives you an overview of some of the actions that we've taken across the year. And I'm just going to come back quickly to some of the challenges and how that links to what we've discussed today. So if you remember, we had three key challenges at the start of the webinar today. The new business requirements, being able to rapidly grow and evolve as a training business that matches the growth of the overall business. We have our system evaluation. So we have two different tech stacks. How do we combine those and how do we pick the right system for what we need? And building that leadership buy-in. How do we have that training value overall and how do we demonstrate that to the wider organization? So our solution here, our new business requirements. If you're not doing so already, implement a monthly business review. It allows you to continuously evaluate performance on a regular basis and really think about those quality reviews as well, because it meant that my team was able to initiate three new initiatives that really had an immediate impact on some of our customers and also allowed us to meet all of those business requirements that we spoke about earlier. When you are evaluating your systems, select the vendors that align with both your business requirements, but also your data priorities. You need to be able to have a really robust system that you can access the data when you need it and as quickly as possible so that you can start doing that analysis in the background as well. And finally, thinking about your leadership buy-in, how do you get your leadership team to really understand the value you bring? Because once they're championing you, that comes top down, and you'll see that investment across the organization, across other teams, and be able to get that overall investment and see that impact that training is having. So that's everything from me today. Do we have any questions, Emily?
So we do have one specific question, and I do think some of the most interesting things about your story are the two very different organizations that came together. So
Mhm.
I will ask you a little bit more about where Ping was compared to where they are today in terms of measurement. But
Mm.
before that, one of the questions from our participants and anybody else, please ask additional questions through that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I think I may have confused people because I used the word chat, but I do mean Q&A. So any questions, just definitely let us know. One question is around your survey results, that
Mm.
information that you're collecting and integration with any other system. This is specifically related to Salesforce, but do you have the data that you're collecting, that feedback from learners integrated with any other, technology piece, part of your stack?
Yes. So where we have our surveys coming into Metrics That Matter, we don't have it synced through into Salesforce, but we do have it synced through into our training management system, which is Administrate. So we did this for a couple of reasons. Firstly was to reduce some of the manual work in terms of setting up and setting up our classes, sending out surveys. We connected our systems together so it's all comes through into one place and we can send out all of our reminders automatically as well. And then we're also able to track our response rate and who's clicking through into our surveys and into our reminders as well. So we did a few integrations. There's more that we like to do. We really appreciate MTM having quite a robust API documentation where we can just leverage what we need and integrate those systems. So definitely more to come next year as well.
And so through that system, is any of that survey data visible to your sales team?
Well, yes, it will be.
That's what
So
I was curious about because we talked a little bit about how you're going to share some data externally next year. So that'll be my next question.
absolutely. So we are working with Power BI to create some dashboards where our sales team will then be able to access based on their customer, what is their survey responses, what's their general sentiment towards training. So we have it all in one place at the moment, but we're trying to figure out how do we get a more cohesive data lake so our sales team can access it because you know as well as I do, if we give them the access to MTM, they won't always use it. Going into another system can be clunky. So we want that one single place that they can leverage that data.
And then I think you have a recent hire. So for next year, is there anything you're doing today or that you want to do to help broadcast, share these great results, the good things you're seeing on the learning side, to help communicate with your external audience?
Mm. Yes. So again, through some of the integrations that we have in place and how we've been able to speed up some of the manual work we had in place, we now have more capacity to have a communications manager, which we never had before. So we have a 2026 communication strategy, which is really exciting. We've never been able to do something like that before. And we're able to bring some of those customer sentiments and particularly with the training value highlights that I talked about today, we're going to be adjusting those into customer stories, which we can then use to shout about what Ping training does and hopefully create some lead generation there as well.
So, I think that's all of the questions I see around like integrating that data, communicating that. Um, so my thing that I would love to hear a little bit more about, because I have this unique perspective being on the outside, but working very
Mhm.
closely with your team. It was really interesting to see where Ping was, I guess, when this merger started,
Mm,
and where you were, from a legacy perspective, very, very different. So I mean, it's crazy to look at this story and really see that these are the steps that brought these two very different learning functions organizations together and on a common path in a fairly short period of time. So maybe if you could talk just a little bit about where Ping was,
mm.
um, and how, because you really did shift their perspective to a whole new way of looking at measurement and that feedback.
Absolutely. So, yeah, when we merged as a business, FordRock had a pretty wide and extensive tech stack. We were running all of our training through a management system. We had vendors for, each capacity of training. We pretty much covered with our vendors. Whereas when we looked at some of the legacy Ping tech stack, it was similar, but there was a lot of gaps. And particularly when it came down to quality, there wasn't as much of a robust system in place. So we had spent a lot of time building our partnership with Metrics That Matter. And that is why we've always driven through customer satisfaction and experience. Whereas when we first looked at the legacy Ping kind of tech stack, they were using kind of Google Forms or Excel to be able to capture that customer sentiment and satisfaction. So it was very easy when it came to that decision of like, what vendor should we choose? How should we proceed? Because we were like, this is something that is a baseline for us. This is a requirement for us to be able to evaluate our customer experience at all points. So it was quite a big shift for them. But I think when coming under one unit and becoming one organization, you kind of cherry pick the best bits, right? So for us, quality and from the FordRock side, quality was something we cherry picked. From the Ping side, there was some technical experience that we cherry picked. And that's what makes you really strong because you get the best of both businesses in the end.
I love it. Um, so one other area where I think you guys have done some exciting things and where we get a lot of questions around is just driving response rates.
Hmm.
A lot of organizations struggle with that, and you are reaching, your customers. So you have an extra layer, an extra challenge there, I think. But you have done a lot of work to keep that a high priority for you, for everybody on your team. Could you talk a little bit about what you do there, and what you've seen work well on in terms of response rates?
Absolutely. So when I picked up as a quality lead a couple of years ago, when I first started working with Emily and the MTM team, I think our response rate was sitting around the 40% mark. And so the first thing I did was really just better understand what was on our survey, what were we trying to achieve? So again, what is that like measurable outcome that we're looking to measure and look at and investigate? And then what was the customer experience? So the first thing I noticed was our survey was way too long. So we had so many questions, and they were great questions, and I understood why they had kind of accumulated. But I was like, as a user, we're all consumers as well as we are training leads, and I'm not going to do a survey if it's going to be pages and pages long. So there were some really quick adjustments that I made in terms of what was in the survey, adjusting the wording of the survey as well, and really thinking about what was the most important thing that we needed to measure in the end. And then the next approach was really thinking about the experience from the customer. When are we going to be able to catch them? How effective are our reminders? And that really opened me up to it's got to be in the classroom. You've got to get that survey completed during the training because it's so much harder to chase and to find the engagement after the training has ended. So that was where I turned my sights a little bit more to the instructors. So, how are they enabled and how do they get the buy-in to that customer satisfaction, right? We can't just say to them, hey, make sure the customers complete the survey because they know that, they should know that anyway. So, we really had to think about, again, what do the instructors want to see? What impact does it have for them to get some of that feedback? And are they seeing the feedback, or is it something that we're keeping a little bit siloed? So we had to think about how we could utilize some of the ready reports and the scheduled reporting on MTM to push out all of those nice quick question reports to our instructors so they can see how did I do in that class? What was the feedback that I got from the students? And then my quality implementing a quality lead who can close that loop and shout it out to the rooftop. So we have a instructor Slack channel where we can be like, hey, so and so did a really great job with this. Share your secrets. How did you get that engagement? And so just building that instructor engagement for the survey. Why is it great to get all this feedback? Really made a huge shift. And now we're pretty consistently hitting that kind of 65% target. So sometimes it's not just sending out the reminders, doing the kind of clunky manual work. It's thinking about the holistic picture, and who can we engage and how can we get them bought into what we're trying to achieve with that data collection.
And I don't think I even know the answer to this question. How are the students directed to the survey? How do they get that?
So they receive an email on the last day of the class. So I think it's like Friday midday, they receive the email from MTM directly. But the instructor also gets an email at the same time to say, hey, give your students 5 minutes. Here's the link. So we ask the instructor to share the link in the Zoom chat and actually give them just 5, 10 minutes to complete the link. So that's how they receive it in the classroom. And then let me just think about timings. So 5 days after the class completes, they get an automated reminder, and if they haven't completed it, and then another 10 days after that, or another 5 days after that, if they've still not completed it. So they do get two reminders. We did adjust our language there and try to make it pop out, try to make it engaging. But I would definitely say that the in class time is the most effective.
Totally agree. Okay, so I think that was always what people will always ask about, just sort of size of your learning function.
Mhm,
Could you talk, yeah, a little bit about, obviously you are providing training globally.
mhm,
You've merged two organizations that are on very different sides of the world.
mhm,
So how big is that learning function today as
mhm.
opposed, compared to where these two were a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so to give you an idea of the growth, trying to remember, our revenue target last year was around 4 million, and this year our target was around 6 million. So we've had to we very quickly growing that customer base, and the training subscription model in particular has really helped us drive those goals and that revenue goal throughout each year. But yeah, so I think in terms of delivery, I think we are generally increasing our delivery around kind of 100 to 200 students for the ILT schedule, and for on demand, it's much larger. So we have a lot of people engaging with our on demand content. Um, which is great, but we do want to try and drive that value of the instructor-led training as well as we move more and more onto the digital world and to the on-demand platforms. We still want to drive that engagement with getting in the room with an instructor to be able to get some of that skill, some of those knowledge and skills from an expert as well. So a lot of growth.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have seen it from the outside, but I really appreciate, and actually, that's a good time to close because we do appreciate you taking the time to share that with the rest of the team. A lot of detail on how your organization functions, how you manage specifically that learning piece of it, your unique audience, and hopefully people have seen how leveraging that data through that merger really helped position your side of it, your leadership team as very uniquely positioned to take on a lot more of the additional training that you are then responsible for. So I've seen great things happen. Thank you so much for sharing your story. There are no other additional questions in the Q&A. Is there anything last minute you wanna? It's perfect timing. We had a good 50 minutes here. So is there anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, nothing from me. Just thank you so much for having me. It's been really great, and hopefully, the participants today got some good takeaways for them to
I'm
take
sure.
forward.
I know I did, and I talk to you every day. So, all right. Thanks again, and thanks everybody for joining. We appreciate you taking some time. Follow up with us if you have any last minute questions after the session or you want to get additional clarification.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.